Thank you for joining the first ever episode of DABCC Live. I'm quite excited, as I always like to say about anything I do, about this episode, as today we have John Wallace from AppSense to talk with us about their Environment Manager solution and personalization and how this is all playing out within this virtualization space and the Citrix space and, blah, 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 blah. So with no further ado, let's just jump straight into it. John, thank you for being on this webinar with us. And, we want to make sure we get to all the questions. We want to make sure we get through everything you want to show us. So let's just dive into it. For my first question I want to throw at you is, can you introduce yourself? Who is John Wallace, and what do you do at AppSense?
Sure, no problem, Doug. Well, I've been with AppSense now for a long time. In fact, I was around with the same group when AppSense actually started, based out of the reseller in the UK. So my role is first and foremost as a technical consultant. So what that means is that I engage with the customer, I present the software, I demonstrate the software and prove its capabilities, if you like. And then I also engage with the customer when it comes to doing things like proof of concepts, when it comes to doing things like training of the software, learning the software, integrating the software into their environment. So I'm really fortunate in the sense that I get to focus on a great piece of technology, the AppSense technology. I get to focus that as my core job, but I get to still engage with the various clients out there, both big and small, and see their environments and work in their environments. So yeah, I mean that's my primary role within AppSense is really first and foremost the technical. Part of the technical team that really stands there and pitches the AppSense products.
You bet, you bet. And John is one of the most technical guys I know. So if you guys get a chance to meet John at a conference or something, go up there and start asking him all these different questions. And John, real quick, you have a great website also. Can you just put a big plug for your website? It's a great resource for everyone out there.
So yeah, so a while ago I actually started what was arguably just a technical website. It was www.insidetheregistry.com, and the idea behind the website is to document, or the idea behind the website was to document the registry in essence and try and get a central knowledge source, try and get a central repository of registry-based information. The website's evolved a lot since then, and I know I have many conversations late into the night with yourself, Doug, where you help me with how to format certain things and stuff like that, and you've done a massive amount of stuff from my website as well. So yeah, have a look at the website. If you can contribute to any of the registry keys and file information, then please do so. We're always looking for more information on there, and hopefully it can grow over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so AppSense. Everyone out there is probably familiar with you guys. You should be. AppSense was actually the first link I ever put on DABCC way back in, I think it was, or third-party link. I think it was something like 2001 that I did that. So you guys are probably familiar, but just real quick, give us an overview of AppSense. Where are you guys today, and what are the benefits to the people out there listening?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of people know AppSense already. AppSense was founded, so AppSense was created in 1999. It's been around a long time now. We have just shy of 200 people across the globe. So offices in the United States, Great Britain, Germany, Holland, Australia. We really do have a complete span of the enterprises across the globe. We're a channel partner-based company, so we have 250 partners who market and if you like, work with our solutions today. And we currently have an install base of around just over 4,000 customers. Obviously, many desktops and devices within those customers as well. So AppSense, for a lot of people will know AppSense as a Citrix-based solution, because that's really where our focus was in the past. Terminal services, Citrix environments. We've got a massive success there, and we have an outstanding partnership with Citrix in that space as well. And AppSense has always had three core products, and these products have evolved over time. First one was Application Manager. Application Manager was AppSense's first product. Its focus, or its primary objective, is a security product. It's designed to control who can execute what, when it can be executed, how it can be executed, etc. Then we've got Performance Manager. Performance Manager optimizes CPU, memory, and disk resources. So we'll allow, if you like, the operating system to manage those resources a lot more efficiently, therefore ensuring things like a quality of service on a terminal server for all of the users that are on there, instead of just one user going and running a horrible application and causing issues for everybody else. And then by far our biggest product, biggest in terms of features, capabilities, etc., is our Environment Manager product. And Environment Manager is really all about user environment management. So first and foremost, profile management, personalization management, making sure that the settings for the applications roam with the user regardless of device, regardless of delivery mechanism, whether it be virtual, physical, native, etc. And then also to enforce policy as well. So if an organization wants to specify a certain drive or specify a certain printer is mapped, then Environment Manager allows you to do that. If an organization wants to put certain security restrictions in place, removing menu items, options from the various applications, that's what Environment Manager does as well. So it really is a huge product, spans a wide range of the user environment management space, and that's really the one we're going to focus on today.
Well, perfect. Well, let's get to it. Enough about all this talking about AppSense and who John Wallace is. And let's dive into the demo and let's get down and dirty. So what are you going to show us? And the other thing is, you know, we really want to talk about personalization and have you dive deep into user personalization. So what is AppSense's view of personalization? Because there's a lot of different views and methodologies of going about addressing this. So what's AppSense's view?
Sure. So personalization to us, Doug, is a lot more than just, let's say, profile management. When people hear about personalization, they automatically start thinking about profiles. And sure, profiles is a very big part of personalization, but for us it's a lot more than that. Personalization, first and foremost, is ensuring that if a user makes a change to an application or they customize an application, that change will go with them. But not just, if you like, not just from that desktop to another desktop on the same type of device or the same operating system or the same delivery mechanism, but we want to ensure that if a user runs Microsoft Word and customizes it in a Citrix session, if they then go to a virtual desktop session, regardless whether it's running Windows 7 or Vista or XP, it doesn't really matter. We want to make sure that that personalization of Microsoft Word also goes to that device as well. But personalization is not just the end-user experience. Personalization to AppSense is how the administrator can manage it as well. So, I mean, sure, you want your users to have a good experience when it comes to personalization, but it's also important that the organization, the administrators, the sysadmins can manage the organization's personalization data effectively to fix problems, to fix, if you like, support calls and address areas like that. So personalization is a lot more vast in the AppSense view of just the profile management.
Well, very cool, very cool. So do you want to show us something?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, let's take a traditional desktop. Think about it today, Doug. Let's take roaming profiles as an example. With roaming profiles, you log onto a machine, your profile is brought down from a network share. You log off, your profile is written back. What that means is your profile is very much what we call user-centric. And what I mean by that is when you log on, your profile comes down in a blob. It happens at log on. Anything that you change during that session remains for that session, and then at log off, that blob, if you like, goes back. So there's no dynamic interaction with the profile. There's no way to span those settings from machine to machine or operating system to operating system during the session because the profile is user-centric. What AppSense wanted to do with its technology is we wanted to make the personalization, the profile, if you like, application-centric. So instead of one user having one big blob of data that gets dragged around with them everywhere, they have multiple application profiles that are small, concise, relevant to the application. That also allows us to give us a lot of dynamic workings, if you like, during the session. So let me give you an example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start Microsoft Word on this desktop here. So we start Microsoft Word. I'm going to do some tailoring of Microsoft Word. Let's assume that I'm an architect as an architect, I want some good real estate. So what we're going to do is let's go to the view, make this big so I can see all my options. I'll turn on my document map, ruler, and my grid lines, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off, if you like, my ribbon. So I've got a nice big view there. And now I'm going to close Microsoft Word down. Now, in order for that setting to go to this desktop over here, separate desktop, in a traditional sense, I would have to log off. But with AppSense, because we're doing things at an application level, if I actually start Microsoft Word over here, what you'll actually see, Doug, is those settings will roam with me. So the personalization is instantly gone across. You see that there?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're doing that. We're not actually logging out of these workstations. That's on a per application basis.
Exactly, yeah. So in essence, let me explain what's going on. When my application starts, we're contacting something called the AppSense Personalization Server. The AppSense Personalization Server is a piece of software that you install in your organization, and this is the console to the personalization server here, that sits there and manages personalization data. So when I start Microsoft Word, the AppSense agent that's on this machine communicates with the personalization server to say, do you have any data for me? Do you have any personalization data for me? If there's personalization data, it will bring it down before the application starts. So any changes that I then make in the application, when I close the application, those changes are then committed to the personalization server. Again, the agent will communicate with the personalization server, and it will send those changes back. So therefore, if I open that application on another device, another operating system, those changes will be brought down at application launch, as opposed to log on when all of the changes come down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I have a question here from the audience, and we want to make this interactive. And they ask, how does AppSense personalization work with Citrix streaming applications?
Okay, so in terms of streaming applications, and it's a very good question, in terms of streaming applications, in terms of soft grid applications, AppV and all of that, basically what we do is the way AppSense works is in essence to intercept the registry reads, registry writes, file system reads, file system writes that are relevant to the application when it comes to personalization. So if your application wants to write a registry key that stores, if you like, the menu, how the menu look and feels, instead of that registry key actually going to the real HT current user, let's say, the AppSense agent will actually take that registry key and it will manage it. So it will manage it locally for the time being, and then when the application closes, it will then send it back to the personalization server. When it comes to streamed applications, the same thing is true. So even though your application is streamed, it's still making correct reg read, reg write calls and all of that. So we're still going to intercept those registry keys, those registry functions. We're still going to intercept the file functions, and we're going to handle that data. Now, the reason that was a good question is we actually have a massive benefit when it comes to streamed applications. A lot of the problems with streamed technologies is that they maintain their personalization settings themselves. So with AppV, you have your bubble. With Citrix, you have your bubbles, etc. Well, what you can do with AppSense, because we, in essence, manage the application at the application level, if you run Microsoft Word, you run Microsoft Word streamed, and you make your changes, we will then preserve those changes. Therefore, if you run Microsoft Word natively, those changes from your streamed application will also be there in your native application as well.
Very cool, very cool. I have another question for you from the audience. And will this work via a WAN?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the whole infrastructure around the AppSense technologies is all based on the HTTP protocol. We do that for a number of reasons. It's a very scalable protocol. It's also firewall friendly and so forth. So assuming that you can communicate HTTP, then yeah, absolutely, the software will work. Obviously, you want to take into consideration things like the size of your data in terms of the size of your pipe versus the size of your data. But yeah, I mean, we've got a number of organizations that use the software across the globe, and they have servers in, let's say, one location, and their users actually log in another location, and it works absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, perfect. And I want to take two more questions from that the audience has brought to us, because it's right about, they make sense for what we're talking about now, and that is, let me sort of get a little bit closer to the screen so I can read this. Will the automatic profile synchronization work in a load-balanced environment in two different data centers in two different within two different continents or two different continents?
Yeah.
If it does, what is the latency for the changes? What will be the latency for the changes to take place? Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Good question. So, in essence, there's a couple of things to highlight here. In order for, if you like, in order for the personalization server to work, to do its communications, we utilize Microsoft's IIS technology. So we build our solution on top of IIS, and then our agents communicate with the IIS server using standard, if you like, standard communications methodology. One of the benefits that we get by using IIS is that Microsoft have already made a very scalable solution. IIS is cluster-friendly, load-balance-friendly, etc., etc. So it made sense that we built on top of that technology, because then our software becomes cluster-friendly, load-balance-friendly, etc. So when it comes to load balancing, we really don't have to worry about it too much, because we go by the rule of, look, you can load balance IIS, therefore you can load balance AppSense. We support all of the technologies that Microsoft support in terms of IIS. And the data store, the repository at the back, is SQL Server. And we use Microsoft SQL Server as a data repository. Why? For the same reason. SQL Server is a highly scalable solution. It provides replication. It provides disaster recovery. Therefore, we naturally get all those benefits as well. So in terms of planning out a deployment of AppSense, the things to think about is where you would place your SQL servers, where you would place your web servers, and you would judge that based on WAN traffic, size of lines, and things like that. But generally, because we use those technologies, we can scale very, very easily.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one more question, then we'll jump back into the demo and me asking some questions. And this is about streamed applications too. And the question basically asks, what about when the streamed app is accessed offline? And that's very important nowadays with offline VDI coming to market here soon. VMware already has an experimental offline within VMware View, and then of course streamed applications. How do you guys deal with that?
Sure. I'm not going to go over this in too much detail on this webinar, because I could spend the whole hour talking about offline capabilities and things like that. But in essence, if I just jump to my screen here, we have this option which is allow offline mode. An offline mode, in essence, allows you to work with a local cache of personalization settings, if you like. And then when your machine comes back online and it can talk to the server, it will exchange information. It will make sure that the latest settings are on the server, that any settings that have been committed to the server come down, and it will synchronize those local personalization data stores. It will synchronize them up. So in terms of running with an application offline, it's no different than running with it online in terms of our software. We're still going to manage the registry keys. We're still going to manage the file and folder information that's part of the application personalization in exactly the same way.
Perfect.
And again, I'm not...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, please finish your thought.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I could talk about offline resiliency and offline mode. I could spend the whole webcast doing that. So what I prefer to do, if that is a need someone wants to discuss, I'm more than happy to discuss that after the webcast with them separately.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, and one more question. This is sort of an architecture question. Is there an agent that goes on all these Citrix servers and local machines, things like that?
There is. So it's the AppSense Environment Manager agent. So wherever the stuff is done, if you like, wherever the technology is running, there's an agent on that machine. I mean, technically there has to be, because it's a piece of software that's running. So yeah, wherever the product is managing, there's the AppSense Environment Manager agent on that machine. The Environment Manager agent is very, very small, though. I mean, the footprint in terms of memory, CPU, it's negligible. So it's not one of these huge, humongous agents that you know, is doing 1,000,001 things.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's get back into sort of discussion around personalization and roaming profiles. We all know roaming profiles cause problems. We have bloat and corruption and just, you know, not being available to end users, right, which is always a pain in the butt. I mean, wow. So how does AppSense address these? Can you show some of this?
Sure, sure. So in terms of things like bloat and stuff like that, the first thing is because we now manage the personalization data at the application level, we can safely take things like deltas. So we can take things of an application that actually change. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this. I'm going to do something called the personalization analysis now, which is going to look at my server, and it's going to look at what personalization data I have stored for my users. The top user is the one I'm using to demonstrate with here. So here you can actually see all my applications. Here's Microsoft Internet Explorer. I'm going to right-click, and I'm actually going to edit the application registry settings for Internet Explorer. So these are actually the registry settings that I have stored that the user has actually made changes to when it comes to Internet Explorer. The one I want to go to is the main key. So Software Microsoft Internet Explorer main. And you'll notice we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 values that have actually been saved. Now, if I actually jump to my desktop and run regedit and go to that same location, so HD current user, software, Microsoft, Internet Explorer, main, you'll see that there's a whole load of registry keys. There's a lot more than 4. Now, in a traditional roaming profile, that entire block of registry values would actually go with the profile. So if you imagine taking that on a larger scale for all your applications and all your components, that's where the bloat comes from. Whereas with AppSense, what we've actually done is we've only captured the ones that have actually changed. So we're only in essence capturing deltas, the things of the application that you need to take with you. We're massively reducing bloat right out the gate. Also, in terms of avoiding things like profile corruption, again, this comes down to the fact that we're now managing settings at an application level. One of the problems with profile corruption is if your profile becomes corrupt, you lose everything. All of your settings, all of your application settings, all of your personalization, it's all gone just because that one profile is corrupt. Well, with AppSense, you don't have a user profile per se. You have application profiles. The settings for Microsoft Word are managed differently than the settings for Internet Explorer, which are managed separately from the settings from Microsoft Excel. Therefore, one application can't just go and corrupt another application's settings, for example. And then the second thing is because we're, in essence, managing the personalization data in a streamed fashion, so we're streaming these settings down as and when they're needed, there's less chance of that one blip that typically affects the profile causing corruption affecting all of these application settings. Does that make sense what I'm saying there, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned rollback, and this is something I'd like you to show, actually. You know, in a typical world, and I've had this happen to me numerous times, and I'm an admin, right? So you think I could solve it myself, or they would solve it for me. But what's happened is I've called into support or to the help desk at whatever company I was working for, a big company, let's call it, starts with the C. And what do? They just go ahead and delete my profile, and then I log back in, and everything's gone. It's one reason I never like to use it. And so that being said, can you show how you overcome that issue?
Yeah, and I know we've spoken about rollback before, and I know you loved the feature when you first saw it.
Oh, so God, I thought it was the best thing ever.
So rollback was a huge feature that was called for by our customer base, and it's the ability to roll back a user's settings without them actually losing everything. When we ask customers, what is the biggest thing that users say when it comes to personalization data, what will happen is the call will come in and it's, yeah, my profile's corrupt, and so the help desk will go, well, what have you done? And they'll go, I don't know, it was working yesterday. So what we wanted to do was introduce a feature that allows us to put the settings back as well as it was yesterday. And this is where rollback comes from. So let me show you rollback in action here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a desktop, and I'm going to start Microsoft Word again. I like doing a demonstration with Microsoft Word. And I'm going to really screw Microsoft Word up now. So let's just change the look and feel here, Word options. We'll change the color scheme to black just because it's nice and visual. If I can make this that way. So I mean, I don't really remember what I did before to Word, to be honest with you. I was just clicking about to show you some personalization data. Needless to say that my Word settings are now broke. I just want to quickly highlight here that those settings will go across to my second desktop as well. So let me just change these here again. So here, I already had Microsoft Word open, so I'm just going to do it on this one instead. Word options, and again, I'm just gonna make a load of settings to Word just to show you some very visual differences. Okay, so there's Microsoft Word. I'm going to close this down. So my user will call me up and they'll say, look, when I start Microsoft Word now, my personalization is broke. You know, my application, my Microsoft Word, it doesn't look right. So what as an administrator I can do is I can say, okay, tell me when it was last working fine, which they'll say, they'll give me a date. So I can go into my personalization server. I can go ahead and do my personalization analysis, but I'm going to use the archives tab for this one. I'm going to go UEM/MandyP. I'm going to display, and this is going to give me all of the applications that I have for this user. I'm going to go down here to Microsoft Word. And I have a couple of archives that I've taken from Microsoft Word. I took these back in May or April. I'm going to right-click on them. I'm actually going to say I want to roll back to this archive. And again, what I can then do is just say to the user, go ahead, start Microsoft Word now. And when the user then starts Microsoft Word, the personalization data, the settings for Microsoft Word, are going to be right back as it was when Word was in that working state, if you like.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. There was a great question asked, and that is from the audience here. Can you delegate rollback to, let's say, a first-level support? So can you have delegated administration?
Yeah, I mean, our software, our management framework supports delegated administration right now, so you can delegate who can manage which machines and which roles and things like that. We are going to expand delegation into the tools. So, you know, being open there. Delegation, if you like, is not granular at this level per se just yet in terms of, you know, giving this user specific rights to manage a certain group and things. But without question, it is definitely on its way there. It's definitely going to get there. We can delegate who has access to open up the console, who has access to manage personalization data. But to get to the delegation of just this person can roll back settings for these users, that's something that's coming down the line.
Perfect. How do you enable the archives? Another question from the audience.
So the question's either one or two things. They've got the software and they're asking how to enable it, or they haven't got the software. So basically, if you install the software, typically the software is configured to automatically take archives for you. It'll take them at 3 a.m. Every day, and it'll keep a week's worth of data. And again, that's all customizable. You can change all of that as well. If they've already got the software, if they just ping me an email, it's in the manuals how you can enable it, how you can turn that on. If they want to ping me an email, if they're not sure, I'll certainly answer that for them. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that you need to do. It's something that the software will automatically do. Now, what you can do is you can force an archive to happen as well. So let me just show you this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force an archive. This is actually a really powerful demonstration as well. So let me go ahead and customize Microsoft Word again. I'm just going to do one customization to this, and that is my black settings here. So I'm making Word with a black theme here. I'm going to close this down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to force an archive to take place for that application. So let me go to my user again. UEM/MandyP. I'm going to come down here, take Microsoft Word, and I'm going to right-click and I want to say, I want to archive the settings. So there you'll actually see now I've got a third archive, one that was taken to today for Microsoft Word. Now what happens is I can start Microsoft Word, I can change Microsoft Word again. Let's say Word options here. Let's change this back to blue, or silver will do. Close it down. I can roll back to this archive now to give me my black theme back. Start Microsoft Word again. There's my black theme. Or I can go right back, roll back to my original archive, which is going to allow me to start Microsoft Word with my original theme again. Rollback is very, very powerful in terms of the capabilities it gives you.
Very cool. And these are a couple more questions from the audience. Does it take extra space in the database? And there's another question along the same lines, and that is, what does the delta on storage growth per X amount of users? So in other words, if I can spit this out, does it use extra space?
Okay, so in terms of to create an archive, yes, obviously it's got to store those settings in addition to the ones that the users currently have as well. So sure, I mean there is an element of extra space that is taken up by the archive. To answer the question, it's really difficult for me to answer the question of how much space is going to be taken for a user, because that all depends on the application, what the application does, what the application writes, how many files, folders, registry keys, etc. the application writes. What I will say is 100% it will be smaller than it would be with a traditional roaming profile, because again, we're only taking deltas, we're only taking the things that have changed, but without actually understanding the application, it's difficult for me to say typically how big the database will be.
You bet, you bet. Now, is there a what's the question here? Is there a self-service component for the rollback feature? Can end users do this themselves without being required to call the help desk?
At the moment, this feature is an admin feature. It's something that's done by the admin. The self-service option is definitely coming with our software. Yeah, we definitely have the intention to make this a user feature as well if the organization wants it to be.
Perfect. And a couple more questions. One guy says Outlook is the most important thing in his organization, which is within most, right? And I guess you guys definitely address Outlook. But this is a good question here. It says if the PST itself, right, becomes corrupted, can we roll that back?
Yeah, I mean, typically if you're storing the PST and the personalization data, if the PST is part of the personalization data which you're backing up, and I want to make a point here. You can choose if you want to exclude certain things. So some organizations, their PSTs might be just too large to span the traffic, etc. So therefore they then choose not to manage them with personalization, and they'll put them in the home drive or somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, if the personalization data, if the personalization server is managing the PST file, yeah, I mean, in essence, you can create rollbacks which would contain snapshots of the PST file. Absolutely.
Perfect. And the questions are just flying in, so we're not going to be able to answer all of these right now. But and we want to make sure we get through the everything we want to show, right? So let's. If we don't answer your question here, I apologize. They're coming in so quick, I can't keep up with them, right? So, let's move. Well, there's one question, and we've talked about Citrix a lot, and someone mentioned ThinApp and the old Thinstall stuff, which is really amazing technology. They say today you don't support that. Is there plans for it? Do you support it? How do you deal with ThinApp-based applications?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our goal is to really support every mechanism we can out there. I mean, we want the experience of the user to be as seamless as possible. So, we want the user to be able to go from one environment to another environment. And yeah, Thinstall and those type of technologies, our developers are working on them right now. I mean, we're having conversations with the various vendors, with the various technology providers, and yeah, needless to say, we're pushing hard to support those technologies.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's jump back into this thing, and let's move forward and away from some of the the rollback feature itself. One of the biggest challenges we see out there nowadays, especially with Windows 7 coming out here soon, is that people need to migrate away from XP. Someday Microsoft is going to end of life this thing and actually stick to it, right? So how does this solution in AppSense make it easier to migrate those profiles, because they're not compatible from XP to Vista to Windows 7? How do you guys deal with that?
It's an excellent question, Doug, and one that I think a lot of people haven't really got the grasp of just yet, because a lot of people didn't go to Vista, they stuck with XP, so they've not experienced what the pain is going to be like. The upshot is that if people have just got a traditional roaming profile environment and they went from XP to Vista, or they went from XP to Windows 7, the profiles are just not going to the profiles are not going to roam, if you like, with them. Vista and Windows 7 is going to put the .v2 on and things like that. The whole folder structure's changed. The registry keys in certain situations have changed. But a lot of these changes are to do with the operating system itself. So a lot of the shell has changed, for example. Vista's got the nice bubbly effect. Windows XP doesn't. You've got the aero stuff. XP hasn't got it. So a lot of this stuff is actually related to the operating system itself. So remember how AppSense manages its personalization. AppSense manages its personalization at the application level. So if I actually, again, look at my personalization data here, you'll see that I have my personalization data for my applications. Sure, I have my desktop settings, which include things like my wallpaper and themes and stuff like that. But with the exception of the desktop settings, everything else is managed at the application level. The Microsoft Word registry keys aren't going to change, regardless. If you run Microsoft Word 2007 on XP or Vista or Windows 7, the registry keys are exactly the same. They don't change just because you go on different operating systems. And because of that, and because we manage the personalization data at this level, this application collection of settings, if you like, this personalization data is going to go seamlessly from Windows XP to Windows Vista to Windows 7 as well. So with AppSense, it's literally going to be you log on one, you log on another, and the personalization data will go across there seamlessly.
Very cool, very cool. So what you're saying is that it doesn't matter what OS the users are coming from or going to or switching back and forth, because one of the problems I've had with personalization in my own world, in my own life, is that I log into Citrix, I have a VMware View desktop, I have a Zen desktop, I have Terminal Services remote apps, I have everything in my environment, but I don't have one profile, and it drives me nuts, and it really makes me not want to use it, right? So,
and Microsoft created this right from the start. Think about it. In Active Directory, you have a roaming profile path, and you have a terminal server roaming profile path. So, right there is, you need two separate profiles because, hey, things might not work the same way on a terminal server as they do on a normal desktop. Well, AppSense gets rid of all of that. AppSense addresses all of those issues. You have one set of personalization data, and that personalization data goes with you regardless of where you are.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left. We want to get to some more questions by the time we're done with this thing, but let's jump into policy. Can you show us, you guys do a lot around policies based on, policies. So can you talk a bit about that?
So again, just like personalization, policy to AppSense is a lot more than just, let's say, group policy. When you mention policy, people automatically think group policies, security, restrictions, etc. But policy is a lot more than that. If an organization writes a login script, that's policy. If an organization puts a reg file there that users import when they log on, that's policy. And the reason it's policy is because it is the organization putting that onto the users. Personalization is ensuring that you collect stuff that the users change, so collecting how Microsoft Word looks, collecting how Microsoft Excel looks. Policy is what, as an organization, you want to enforce on your users. So what happens at logon? What happens when this application starts? What happens with your Outlook PST file and where that sits? That's potentially all policy. So when AppSense talks about policy, we encompass all of that. So we're going to be a technology that's going to do all of the things that you do with login scripts, all of the things that you do with group policy, all of the things that you do with reg files, wrapper scripts, all of that technology we'll do with our one component here. And we do this through what we call trigger points. Trigger points are when things actually happen.
Very cool, very cool. So can you show us how you apply policies? Can you take a look? Let's create a policy, apply it to a user, and let's see it working. Okay.
So what we're going to do here is we can go ahead and create a node. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into my nodes here. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say I want to add a node under General Logon. And this is going to be, I don't know, let's call this an example policy. A node is a folder, it's a container. It's just, if you like, it's where you're going to configure your actions, where you're going to create your actions, if you like. So what I mean by actions is stuff that I want to happen at this point. So these can be things like registry items, so the ability to create keys, set values, delete values, registry hiding, etc. File, folder, copy files, delete files, move files, perform things like folder redirection. So if I actually look here, you can actually redirect all of the traditional folders that you would, my documents, favorites, cookies, etc. I'm just going to move along these so you get an idea of the actions that we actually support. Map drive, map printer, set the default printer, manage ODBC connections. We have the ability to, with the App vWizard, we actually have the ability to on-the-fly customize OSD files. This is a huge feature.
Really cool.
Yeah, this is a huge feature for us. And basically what this feature allows you to do, in essence, is have, if you like, one package. So you've got your AppV package there, you've got your OSD file with that package, and in a traditional environment or in a large environment, what you have is you have different OSD files for different types of people. Let's say you've got a web browser that's virtualized. Well, you might have an OSD file that's got certain proxy settings. You might have an OSD file that's got certain home pages. These all have to be maintained separately. Well, with AppSense, what we can actually do is keep the same core OSD file, and for this group, if you like, and I'm going to talk about conditions in a second, but for this group, I want to add this item in. For this group, I want this certain prescript or postscript and things like that. So yeah, it allows us to basically manage that OSD file, tweak it before it gets to the end user, and customize it in essence on the fly.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
We have the ability.
Do you see something like that coming for VMware's ThinApp and Citrix's streaming solution? Maybe that'd be cool, don't you think?
Yeah, and again, it comes back to really what I was saying before. You know, our goal is definitely to be the de facto solution between all of these. I mean, you know, we're never going to get away from an industry that's got multiple vendors. And while an industry's got multiple vendors, there's going to be inconsistencies in terms of personalization, policy, and stuff like that. Because all these vendors are going to want to do it their own way. Well, with AppSense, because we're going to cater for these vendors, in essence, we're the bridge. It doesn't matter what hypervisor you use. It doesn't matter what desktop broker you use. It doesn't matter what terminal services platform you use. With AppSense, your stuff's going to look the same regardless of where it's coming from.
Very cool, very cool. Well, keep showing us.
Okay, so we can execute actions, create custom actions, group policy. So we can actually set group policy. And this is, let me just give you an example of how this makes your life easier. I mean, everyone on the call, I'm pretty sure, has managed group policy in some way. So the way you manage group policy is you use your template files. So let me go ahead and just quickly grab my template files here. And this is the same look and feel as you would have with group policy, right? So let me ask you a question, Doug. I mean, I know you've not done this for a long time, but I mean, do you know where the option is to remove running group policy?
I'd have to look it up.
And there's probably a handful of people on the webinar that can actually just say, yeah, it's here, here, and here. But the general people would have to either Google search or dig through it.
Well, you know where I would go? I would go to insidetheregistry.com.
Cool, I appreciate that. I mean, with AppSense, what you can actually do is just type things like remove run, and it's going to go straight to the policy that allows us to remove the run option.
Oh,
I'm going to go ahead.
So like printing stuff. I do printing, and up it comes.
Yeah, exactly. So classic shell is going to take me to the Windows Explorer. Let's have a look.
Oh, cool.
Let's have a look for print. So printer. So these are all the policies that have the word printer in them, for example. It just makes life so much easier and quicker to apply these things.
Oh, very cool, very cool. No more searching through ADM files.
Exactly, yeah. Then we get to our environment variables, etc. Okay, so once you've set your actions, so you've created some actions, and if I come down here, you'll actually see I've got some folder redirections that I've already got applied to my user. Now what I want to do is I want to apply rules and conditions to these, and this is really where the rules and conditions tabs comes in. So what I can actually do is, let's say these bottom three, I want to add a certain condition to them, and that condition is going to be something like a user group. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to take any group from my Active Directory here. We'll take this MS Live group as an example. So there you can see my group there now, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move these down and put them under that group, and it really is that simple. Basically what you've got now is these folder redirections are only going to happen if you're a member of this group. These folder redirections are only going to happen if you're a member of this group. If you want to do both, so if you want to say the bottom three only happen if you're a member of that group and that group, all you do is you simply, and I'm using my keyboard to do this, but to highlight it visually, you just simply move them right, and you can see the organization now. Basically, these are applying if you're a member of this, and if you're a member of this one, then these are going to apply as well. It just makes management and organization of this policy so much more simpler.
Very cool, very cool. Well, John, we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to show us before we jump back into some Q&A and then go ahead and call this a webinar?
Yeah, I just want to make people aware. One of the key things that I want to bring up when it comes to policy is the trigger points, because the trigger points really set this aside from a lot of other solutions. In fact, Doug, if that's okay.
Oh, please, please. I meant to ask you about that, and it escaped my mind. So
That's not a problem. Okay, so I mean, traditionally, policy is applied at the log on and log off trigger point. So group policy is applied typically at log on, log off. Login scripts are applied, log in, log off. Reg files are applied, log in, log off. So if you like, the industry is conditioned to doing things at log in and log off. And because of this, if you like, a lot of organizations have needlessly long login times. I mean, what's the point in configuring Lotus Notes if you don't actually use Lotus Notes during the session? What's the point in configuring the SAP GUI client if you don't actually use the SAP GUI client during your working day? But nonetheless, all that's in the login script, so it happens every time the user logs on. So AppSense introduced some additional trigger points to address these issues. For example, the process start and process stop trigger point. What these trigger points allow me to do, and I'm going to go ahead and add a node. It's going to ask me for a process name, let's say winword.exe. I've now got a process name rule here, which is equal to winword.exe. In essence, what I could do now is I could let's take all of these folder redirections. I'm going to cut them out of login, and I'm going to actually paste them under my trigger here. So in essence, what I've just said is those folder redirections are only going to happen when Microsoft Word is actually launched. They're not going to happen at logon, so you're not going to get the login delay. When Microsoft Word launches, that's when those folder redirections are going to happen. Now, obviously, you would never do folder redirections when an application starts, because that affects the shell. You want to do that. But I just wanted to use those actions and move them from logon to process start to highlight what I was talking about there. Process stop is another example. Obviously, when the process stops, you want to do certain things. Network disconnect, reconnect, session disconnect, reconnect. I mean, think about the healthcare industry, right? A doctor goes to maternity, let's say, and he does his rounds, and then he sits there and he types up his report. So he logs onto his laptop, and there's a really smart login script that goes ahead and maps all his printers for the maternity ward. So he types up his report, hits print, and it comes out on the printer next to him. But then he gets paged. He's immediately got to go to ER. So he doesn't actually log off at this point. He just closes his leg and off he runs to ER. He gets there, he does his business, he opens up his laptop, he types up his report, hits print, and the printout comes back in maternity because that's the last time his printer was mapped, right? Yep. Well, network disconnect, session disconnect, reconnect, those trigger points address that type of thing. We can now detect that the doctor, let's say, has disconnected from the network, or we can detect an IP address change, for example, or we can detect things like him unplugging a cable from his laptop, and we can dynamically reconfigure his environment based on that. And when you take this to a VDI space, I mean, think about it. You might not necessarily log off your VDI session. Disconnect is an option, and leave it running is an option, and then you go home and you log in. Well, I mean, we don't want things like printers mapped if you're at home. We don't want things like drives mapped to sensitive data if you're at home. So AppSense gives you the ability to completely reconfigure your environment on the fly on these trigger points.
Very cool, very cool. So yeah, I remember you guys showing that to me, and I was like, wow, now that really allows us to get very granular with all these policies that you guys have based on where they're coming from, what they're doing, and things of that nature, which helps us with, like you said, HIPAA and other sort of regulations out there also.
I mean, I'm not just saying this because I work for AppSense, though, but I mean, I've been in the industry a long time. I've been a terminal services client, terminal services consultant. I've seen the problems that customers have, and even I do my demonstrations. I demonstrate the software every single day, and even I'm still today, I'm blown away by the fact that it's so easy to do this stuff. I mean, with AppSense makes a lot of these tasks just completely easy.
Well, that actually brings me to a question from the audience, and that says, the question says, quote, "This sounds cool, but can this actually be tested in the real world?" So, and I'm going to extend that question to say, if guys want to test it themselves, what do they need to do? Can they download the eval? How easy is that to get going? Things
yeah, like AppSense does offer a full eval. You can go to appsense.com and you can enter your name and information, and you can get an evaluation copy of the software. It's fully functional, nothing's restricted. You can install it, test it, play with it, roll it out to your environment, go live, anything that you want to do, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can do that solo, or myself and the other engineers in the organization were more than happy to do some phone calls with you, to walk you through the setup, walk you through some of the features, how to set them up, etc. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody that wants to test the software, anybody that wants to play with the software, go to the website, register, and we'll get you going straight away.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, so we have just a few minutes left, and before we get into a few more questions, I just want to thank everyone for attending. And if you've liked the show, please, send me a chat message here. If you have any suggestions, let us know. Also, I want to try something. This might be sort of interesting. I don't know how many of you guys are on Twitter, but if you like the show, go ahead and Twitter about it. If you would, real quick, just do like an @DABCC and @Douglas A. Brown, which is me directly, and then also throw in there a big thank you for John Wallace and AppSense, which is @AppSense and for John Wallace B69CA. So if you guys would just real quick, just Twitter that, and we can see how many Twitters we get related to the show. So a little shameless plugs, but maybe next time we'll bring some more people into this, get more questions and all that. And it's just fun to do. Let's use Twitter. So on that note, I have a couple more questions for you, John.
Yep.
And we'll use up the remaining amount of our time on some questions. Then any questions we have not answered, we'll answer within a Q&A doc that we'll post within a week. And then also, if you guys have any questions, please email John Wallace. And John, you want to give him your email address?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll actually put my email address on the screen there. And if they do want to email me, then that's fine. I mean, obviously people won't realize this with the accent, but I'm actually based in the US. So if it's a US resource that you need, then I'll put you in touch with a relevant person. If it's another country, then I'll pass you through to the relevant people in those countries as well.
Well, perfect. Okay. So can we? So the question, quote. So can we run 2003 and 2008 servers at the same time? Let's say in a Citrix farm, he says, using the AppSense solution and have the same profile run back and forth.
Absolutely. You can run Windows 2003. You can run Windows 2008 terminal services. You can run Windows XP, Windows Vista, all at the same time. Have applications publish into them. Have applications stream to them. One single set of data will roam those environments.
And not just for your Citrix. You can do this for their local traditional workstations and their laptops also. Correct?
Yep, absolutely. And again, one of the things that people haven't kind of grasped with VDI is if you want to go VDI and you want to go whole hog, you've got to migrate that personalization data from their physical desktops now to their virtual desktops. I mean, if you're going to go VDI and you're going to use Windows 7 and you've got Windows XP desktops out there, you've got the same problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's a great question. If you upgrade Office 2003 to Office 2007, how is this handled? Are your personalizations carried over? Are there any limitations to Office products?
Right. So that's a very interesting question because you can handle that in two different ways. What I'm actually going to do is I'm running down my applications here. These are applications that I've pre-created. These are managed applications. You can extend this, so I can right-click, add an application, etc. I'm just seeing if I've actually got Microsoft Word. I don't believe I have. I'll just take any of these executables to highlight point, Internet Explorer. You'll notice here we've got this thing called Operating System and Application Version, and these are set to .star. That's a regular expression. What that means is that if the process names iexplore.exe and these are .star, manage the personalization as a whole. So in this case, that wouldn't matter if it was IE6, 7, IE8, it doesn't matter. The personalization data would roam across all of them. There are situations where you might want to maintain separate settings. So for example, you might want the personalization data of Word 2003 to be different to Word 2007. So you can do that. You can specify Word 2003, you can enter the version, and then you can specify Word 2007, enter the version. At that point, the personalization server would manage those two applications separately. If you don't do that, it will manage them all together. So yeah, the personalization data would just upgrade with the application.
Very cool, very cool. So one more question. Will this also track applications that don't depend on registry, but rather INI files?
Yep. So, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on the registry on this, just purely because it's the quickest thing. But if I actually come in here again, I'm going to do personalization analysis. Let me have a look at some of these applications here. So let's take Microsoft Word again, because I'm pretty sure Microsoft Word will have some files. Or PowerPoint. PowerPoint will be a good one. And then as well as the registry, you can also see that there's files. So PowerPoint's got 2 personalization files. There's OPA12.dat and PowerP12.pip. Let's go and take WinWord, view the files list. So yeah, and so you've got your custom.dict that's managed by AppSense. You've got your templates, your pip file, your DAT file. Absolutely. So basically, if your application writes to an ini file, it's automatically going to be handled by AppSense.
Very cool, very cool. Let's see what else we have here. And we're right at the hour limit, so if you guys have a hard stop at an hour and you have another meeting, I definitely want to respect that. So thank you so much for your time, but we're going to go through a couple more questions, and then we'll go ahead and call it a show. But let's see, these are so small print, I can barely see them. One person said an hour just wasn't enough. Let me know about that. If you guys would like to do longer webinars, let us know. We try to be very considerate of people's times. With podcasts, I don't care if they go an hour and a half, because you listen to them coming and going, you know, as you're driving to different locations, or when you're working out, if you're one of those healthy people. And if you're a smart person when you work out, unlike me. But we like to keep these, but we will continue to go after the fact and answer questions. You know, as I've always said, I'll stay online as long as you want to stay online. And hopefully John, you know, John will too, probably. In fact, he will, because I just told him he will. So but we're only going to answer a couple more questions, and there's a lot of these that get a little bit more detailed. So what is the licensing model?
So the licensing model, I mean, the licensing model really depends on the type of enterprise, and this really was a technical thing, so I'm going to actually avoid that question. That's a question that's best handled by the account management team, and you know, when the person is interested in evaluating the software, they can discuss licensing at that point.
Yeah, I always answer the question is, I'm an engineer. I don't buy product. I don't know what they
Right, I'm a tech guy. But as soon as I start putting the sales thing in, people think I lie.
Yeah, exactly. It's free, so it's not free, unfortunately, but it's definitely it's worth the value. So, okay, is there a local cache for local clients, like let's say laptops?
Yep, so for example, if I actually bring up, I apologize, let me bring this back in. I realize you didn't see that. It was on my second monitor. So if I go on to the hard drive of this virtual desktop here, you'll see that there's a virtual AppSense virtual folder, which actually includes the AppSense cache for my applications. And unless you tick the offline mode, that cache is actually deleted when the user logs off to allow you to use stateless and your clean environment. If you tick this allow offline mode, that's for laptops and things, that cache is going to stick around. So therefore, if you're not connected to the personalization server, you can still utilize your offline cache.
Very cool, very cool. And then there's a few questions, or not really questions, they're almost statements saying, you know what, this tool will do this, or this tool will do that. But I think what, you know, no offense to these, you know, any of those guys, but what's neat about the AppSense solution, I'll just sort of give my personal plug here, is that this is one tool to do it all. You know, it's not, okay, let's use this for that, and this for this, and this for that, and, oh, where do I do this again? That's what's neat about a solution like this, because it's your environment. You manage the entire environment. You're not just managing little components. Anything to add to that, John?
No, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, I've just shown you one tool. AppSense is a suite of 3 tools. I mean, we've not even touched the security tool. We've not touched the performance tool. I mean, we can do them on another web demo, another webcast, Doug. But Environment Manager itself is a huge tool, and it does so much. And I've literally, in this hour, I've scratched the surface. I've not gone through half the things that the product can actually do and do for you. I could spend a full day going through the features. Yeah, I mean, people, when they watch the demo, it's like, oh yeah, this can do this and this can do this. I mean, it really can. I mean, it can do so much for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you guys want to learn more about this, again, what do they need to do?
So again, go to the website, register. You can download the software. My email address, I put it back on the screen there. You can email me. I'll put you through to it. If I can't answer you myself, I'll put you through to the relevant resource. Yeah, I mean, don't be a stranger. Contact us. We'll definitely work with you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And again, guys, get on Twitter, log on Twitter, and go ahead and Twitter at Douglas A. Brown and at B69CA, and then also at AppSense too. And this is something we're going to try out and see if we can get a little bit of Twitter conversation going on about the show and get some more people, more questions, and just make it a love fest here. So as I always like to say, I do this a lot when I do presentations or talk with somebody, and it says, I'm cool, you're cool, let's be cool together. So that's sort of our mantra for what we're doing here, and I hope you guys like it. John, I really, really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you helping coming up with the DABCC Live format that we're going to try out here. I hope you guys like it. If you have any suggestions on how to make this better, because this is episode number 1, and we're just sort of winging it right now, as you can always tell. And so, again, John, thank you so much.
Not a problem, Doug. It's always a pleasure to do these with you. It's always a pleasure to catch up.
Absolutely. And we're going to have you on and talk about some of these other couple products that you guys have and get to the entire suite. So,
absolutely.
And for those guys out there listening, if you want to do that, send me an email. You know, Douglas or dbrown at dabcc.com, or Twitter it, and you know, we'll make sure, you know, we bring AppSense back on, or any company out there. So this is what we do. So we just share information with you guys. So I'm rambling at this point, so I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm just going to say thank you for everyone attending. Thank you for AppSense for helping make this possible. Thank you for John for taking the time to do this, and let's go ahead and call this webinar. So thanks, guys, so much.
Take care.
We are now concluding the broadcast.